It's really been an amazing time ever since this the city decided to issue this RFP. I've met so many of my neighbors and residents and really understood how important Miami Beach is to all of you and to this entire community. And I'm just honored to be here and to have the potential to create this engine, I think, an economic engine to this community, which is so important. And just to give you a little background, so the city has 6 referendums, and 2 of those 6 referendums are specific to the convention center and the convention center hotel. The first is referendum 2. So this is going in and out, so I'll,
There's no one. You want to try that one?
Let me try.
Give us back up. As long as that's on.
So there's 2 referendums, Miami Beach Referendum 2, Miami Beach Referendum 3. Miami Beach Referendum 2 is earmarking the lease revenues that the city receives to 3 specific buckets, which are basically local schools and education, traffic mitigation, and stormwater mitigation and resiliency. So that's an earmarking of the funds and revenues and just the lease revenues coming from the hotel. The third Miami Beach referendum has to do with the approval for a 99-year ground lease to the developers to build the convention center hotel that's connected to the convention center with 0 city subsidies, right? So if you speak to Rolando Aedo, who will speak a little earlier, we still can't find one convention center hotel in the entire country that's been built without a city subsidy. And the second thing in the referendum is that there is no gambling allowed on this property or by any owner of this hotel in Miami-Dade County. And the third item talks about the guaranteed rent. So with that, I just wanted to go through a quick PowerPoint presentation. I really wanted all of you to be able to answer a lot of questions. So with that, if I could just get started. So this just talks a little bit about the team, who's involved in the team. Our general contractor, Coastal Tishman, is a very local general contracting firm that joint ventured with a national international firm. AECOM actually owns Tishman, so they're an amazing amount of experience in the hospitality space. We also have another individual. His name is Walter Meyer from Local Office Landscape. One of the big things for this project is going to be resiliency. So we have a solar component that's going to be an important part of the energy production of this hotel, as well as a lot of green infrastructure and a lot of water collection during storms. And then there's a kind of a list of all these buildings also going to be LEED certified gold. So I think this building is kind of a model, and we're hoping it's going to be a model of what types of construction happen on City of Miami Beach from a resiliency standpoint. You could flip through this quickly. This just shows a bunch of the hotels that the team throughout the country has been involved with, some convention center hotels, some not. And then here we go with our design. And urban plan. So just so you can see, this is kind of an aerial map of the convention center district. And so if you see right there is the 2-acre property that will be ground leasing from the city. And obviously you see that the Fillmore is intact. And you see also the Miami Beach Convention Center Park, that Westgate design that I understand from the city officials is going to be advancing as those trailers are moved out. So we're really excited about that green space, and also it just shows kind of the connectivity of this convention center to Lincoln Road, to New World Symphony, to just all the cultural assets, and really how this can really unlock a lot of value for a lot of the cultural assets we have next to our newly imagined convention center. I'm going to go through a little of the context. So one of the big things the city had, and I think Saul, you may have participated on the committee, the Blue Ribbon Panel. There was a Blue Ribbon Panel that Saul and Commissioner Arreola and Commissioner Chris and Rosa Gonzalez kind of spearheaded, and there was a series of recommendations. This happened from 2016, 2017. There was a series of recommendations that came out, and so the city's RFP kind of took into account those recommendations as well as our proposal and design. A lot of it had to do with height. So the prior proposal was approximately 300 feet. We could continue going through that. Our proposal is 185 feet. It's 15 stories. And we'll go into the design a little earlier, but it just shows kind of the different height, which I think was one of the concerns in the prior proposal. And I think not only is our proposal, I think, an improvement from a height point of view, I think from a traffic circulation queuing point of view, we'll get into that a little bit, from a parking standpoint, as well as from a resiliency standpoint. So with that, this shows the connection. I kind of toured it last week with several. Some of you were during that tour with the mayor, and we see the area where the connection to this convention center will go. And then we just these are just some conceptual renderings of the project that talk a little bit about contextually where it fits, what it does. One of the good things about the pedestrian component is kind of the weatherproofing from a walkability standpoint, as well as the green infrastructure to kind of water polish a lot of the water prior to entering the stormwater system, which is kind of some new techniques that I think the city would like to do, more green infrastructure. It's not always about raising roads. Sometimes green infrastructure can handle the water, manage the water better. So this is just one of those ideas that are incorporated into the project. With that, these are some of the great kind of designs. Going back, we talked a little bit about the building and kind of the different floors and levels, and we're going to go specifically, but this is kind of a stacking plan where you basically see the ground floor plane where all the queuing and access into the garage happens within the site, not outside the site. And then also the parking all being housed in one floor really speeds a lot of things. And then we have our ballroom condition, our pool deck condition, and obviously the hotel. And one of the tricks, obviously, for us, to get the height, because I know one of the blue ribbon panel recommendations was to study the expansion of the site, but our architect was able to really design a very smart design, because he was able, the team was able to create 74 keys per floor. In the prior proposal for Portman, they had around 40 keys per floor. Same size keys as Portman, the 2015 design, but when we incorporated basically a simple L, and you'll see it shortly, that's how the height was able to be reduced and still fit within the small footprint of 2 acres. So with that, this just shows the queuing and accessibility into the site. One of the early designs had the old design had a porte-cochere right on the intersection of Convention Center Drive and 17th Street. What we did is we increased the amount of drop-off area by 600%. From the prior plan, by incorporating one way in, one way out, and we created an Uber drop-off valet, shuttle valet area within the property as well. And we incorporated an ability for people to access the parking without going back onto the street. In the prior plan in 2015, someone would go into the drop-off and then leave back on Convention Center Drive in order to go back into the garage. We all house that internal circulation here. So on this floor is basically where the cars will be dropped off. And for people to, not cars, but either cars or people be dropped off. And then on the second floor, and this shows a Miami Beach Welcome Center that's kind of a space we're donating to the city to be able to use, whether it's for the Bureau, the Chamber, or whatever as a visitor center or component that's going to be right on 17th Street. We have our lobby condition that's basically adjacent to the convention center. We felt it was important to house that there. You also see here from a loading standpoint, we've worked closely with Live Nation for the Fillmore on the logistics from a loading standpoint. One of the great things, I wish I had one of those red lights, one of the great things, that service road that's basically to the north of the site is a really important use of space, because from a loading standpoint, that whole area is vast. It's a significant amount of area, and so what we've done is been able to solve a lot of the turning radiuses so that really there's no turning or radius happening or backing in of loading trucks onto streets. It's all happening within that service road and within the street that's basically between us, the hotel, and the Fillmore. So if we go to the next slide, keep going, lobby, that shows the welcome center. This is now the parking facility, so we ramp up to 1 floor. There's no 6-story, 8-story, 12-story the prior plan had. I think it was approximately 7 stories from the garage. There's a lot of ramping time, et cetera, to get cars in and out. One of the great things about this floor is that this is the floor where the connection is to the convention center. And you see the escalators and vertical transportation that's occurring there, but this is the area we want people to pick up their cars if they valet. So the ground floor drop-off is going to happen there, pickups happening on this floor, same floor as the pedestrian connections convention center. There's some resiliency things that we're doing in the corners, but we'll talk about that later. I don't want to kind of go, I'll go a little faster, so just give me a direction if I'm taking too long. So ballroom condition, really kind of state-of-the-art stuff. We're working right now. We've shortlisted to Hyatt and Hilton as our 2 flags, and we're going to be working on a franchise agreement, which is a management franchise agreement with both firms, so I could get it more in detail later in the presentation. This talks about the pool deck. One of the important things for the viability of this hotel is that it functions and has a DNA and identity of Miami Beach, and I think this deck is going to be an important deck to kind of showcase kind of our city, and there's amazing views and whatnot from this facility. But and keep going, yes. So this is kind of the amenities, and then this is the trick in order to get the building to be 185 feet, which is basically you have one leg and another leg. So the mass, I don't know if anyone remembers the last plan, the mass of the 300 feet was on the intersection on the street, so we pushed the building back. Right, so, and it works. From a structural engineering standpoint, it's very efficient. It really fits all the program that we needed, but we pushed the mass back from the street. So we really have only around a 50-foot volume on the street on 17th, and then really this back volume, which is 185 feet, is moved back, and et cetera. This just talks a little bit about what we're doing on the roof from a water collection perspective and solar perspective. This kind of shows a section of this building, kind of the ground floor experience, parking, ballrooms, pool deck, and hotel. So it's a very simple, and we'll talk a little bit about logistics and construction a little later if there's any questions. Walter Meyer. Walter was part of the ULI panel that did an opinion as it relates to resiliency about the city, what they were doing right, what they were doing wrong. He was probably the President Obama's #1 expert as it relates to resiliency and urban resiliency, and so I don't want to bore you with a lot of these details, but we could just flip through, just talking about topography, talking about elevations, what's happening at the site, where salt water is, where the groundwater is. Walter's someone that I hope is doing many projects in our city, because he really comes up with a lot of innovative landscape solutions and green infrastructure solutions that not necessarily require pumping, et cetera. So we'll talk a little more later about that if there's any questions. This just talks about some ideas on creating water districts, and this is kind of an aspirational idea that we're proposing to the city, and we could talk more in detail about that. This just talks a little bit about site and access. You could keep going. If it goes, this shows you kind of where this 500-year floodplain is. So today, most development and throughout the county is targeting a 100-year floodplain. This development's targeting a 500-year floodplain. So what 500 years, 100 years is, 100-year floodplain is that 1% chance of that rain event, and then 500 years is whatever that division is, so it's 0.25% or some very low percentage of potential. But as these rain events and pulse events occur, a lot of these buildings can start collecting water in order to be putting less pressure on our stormwater system when we do have heavy rain. It's a super cool, interesting way of building. We're doing 2 other buildings with a lot of these systems, a lot of permanent heat. Just so you know, Walter did the Miracle Mile and Giralda and Coral Gables streetscape. Those 2 streets are the most resilient streets in the entire country for the amount of water and rain that it could store during the last hurricane. It had no flooding or anything like that. So really some innovative, great thinkers that we tried to put together, including Craig Robbins and others, but I just going to try to go through this presentation as quickly as possible. Going back, we're gold certified, so these are requirements that are in the lease. One of the things with City of Miami Beach, unlike City of Miami, for instance, does referendums based on a term sheet with a proposer. City of Miami Beach required a lease, a fully negotiated lease, and a development agreement and a room block agreement. And so those are binding documents on us. So after this vote, they become operative. So it's not like this vote is basically voting on something that then is going to change or be renegotiated. We have a binding document that we as the proposers have to execute on and are obligated to hopefully after November 6th. So we'll keep going. Mobility, this just talks a little bit about the connectivity to the site and some of the ideas. One of the big things we want to focus on is having various modes of transit and how does the trolley, how's the walkable experience, certain connections that we want to make, connecting the convention center to Lincoln Road from a pedestrian standpoint and a safe standpoint. I think those are all things that we're working on, and we've engaged Kinley Horn as our traffic engineer to work on that. And just specific to that, there's two things I just want to mention. During construction workers will be parking off-site. We will be paying off-site for construction parkers and shuttling them in. We're currently doing that over at Holliver Beach, for instance, for our 87 Park project. We also did that for our glass project in Ocean Drive, where we basically provide off-site parking with Miami Parking Authority, which is in the city of Miami, and then shuttle in the construction workers every day and every night. That's one kind of requirement. The second question, because I've been going to a lot of neighbor meetings, the second question is the roads, and will roads ever be shut down at any period of time? And so one of the goals for us is that, and objectives is there's really no upgrades that are needed to the systems or from a civil standpoint, so we're just doing connections. Those connections can occur to the utility stormwater system, electrical connections, etc. Those connections can occur at night, so we do not plan, and in our MOT, which is kind of a logistics plan that we have to get approved by the city to start construction, those elements will be earmarked inside that MOT plan, and so kind of, we need to abide by the City of Miami Beach's ordinances and noise ordinances, etc. So a lot of the construction, our goal and objective is to mitigate construction impact. We understand from a neighborhood standpoint, convention center's been under construction. And so for us, our goal is to try to make this as quiet, as seamless as possible. Two simple moves we made. One, moving the building back, kind of moves the crane back, and all the picks and drops from the crane are now going to be happening on the service roads, etc. So they're not going to be happening on the street. So that's one great move. And also the second move is the basic flow of materials and in the site that are going to work through this service and area adjacent to the Fillmore. And so we just got some endorsements from some of the Fillmore folks, and it was part of kind of that outreach and that logistical working together to kind of make sure they function and the convention center functions, and we function very well. Yeah, both Lincoln Road and Fillmore were really excited about the project. I know Lincoln Road, a lot of the businesses and landlords were really excited to, because I remember 2013, and there was a kind of a little question mark as it relates to that, but I think they're super supportive, and we got the bids endorsement, I think, today. So anyways, if you could keep flowing the presentation. Oh, wayfinding. One of the big things that, and I've been talking to the city a little bit about this, is wayfinding. Number one, not only wayfinding on our side, but kind of looking at the convention center as a whole in the district, and kind of, how we can minimize, for instance, in Palmview and that association, and we had a meeting early on about having as little commercial traffic or Uber drivers really hanging out in these residential neighborhoods. And that's kind of an enforcement aspect and a wayfinding and a signage aspect. And that's something that I think the city's working on. And I think it's important now that we're hopeful we get these great conventions after this convention center gets running and the hotel gets open. So keep going. That just talks about the roading. Then on the financial side, I could talk a little bit about this. So we're projecting around $340 to $360 million of cost. This is not one of those deals that are, easy. This is a development project. It has, its risks, but, we have a solid group of experienced professionals, Jackie Sofer, excuse me, and Turnberry, and their experience, and in our experience, we are developing, several projects throughout our community, and not only in Miami Beach, but in the county, in Broward County. So this is very manageable for us. The construction loan is going to be around $220 million. Equity is going to be around $120 million. And so, but there's no subsidy from the city, no money. This is a straight lease, and we are at risk, right? Thanks, Jeff. And then let's keep going to the next slide. The ground lease terms. One of the big things is, the gross revenues. So when you look at the revenues for the hotel, not only is the revenue going to be the lease contracted rent, but there's also the real estate taxes associated with the project, as well as the resort tax and the food and beverage tax. So if you go to the next slide, it'll kind of, and I wouldn't pay attention to the total life of the lease. It really shouldn't be on this slide because we need to think net present value. But really, in today's dollars, the city projected revenue is $225 million. That's on average around $10 million a year, of which I would say lease contracted revenue is probably anywhere between 2.5% to 3.5% of gross revenues, $3.5 million. And the rest is going to be coming to the city's portion of the millage of the real estate taxes of this project, assuming just that they assess it at the cost. And also the resort taxes, percentage of resort taxes that goes to the city and the city's operating budget. So I think I forgot the ranking, but we will be one of the most significant taxpayers to the city when this is done. And this just talks a little bit more about the school board, what they get from a net present value off the real estate tax. The state revenue talks about sales taxes really, but this just shows you kind of the economic benefits that this project's going to yield outside of really finishing kind of, making the convention center, optimizing its full potential. So we could go job creation. These are just some great numbers. Full-time employment, had a few questions about that. I would say it's probably 300 to 400 at a given time. Employees will be shuttled from the mainland. We have an understanding with Miami Parking Authority and Noriega. We've done this before with Miami Parking Authority on long-term agreements on parking assets that they have. And this hotel will have several shuttles, and one of those shuttles will be focused because not only, one of the things we glossed over before, this project is fully supported by Unite Here. They're a hospitality union that not only looks at the wages of its employees, but also its benefits. And I think from a transportation standpoint, trying to reduce that transportation cost to employees is kind of one of the missions of Unite Here and Wendy that runs that union. So we have full support, and we signed the labor peace agreement. So basically this hotel will be unionized. And I think it's one of only 2 hotels on the beach that have such agreement. Today, these are at the time of the presentation, we had letters of interest from Marriott, Hyatt, and Hilton, and we've shortlisted it now down to Hilton and Hyatt, and hopefully after November 6th we'll be making that decision and really getting their brand. So with that, I just wanted to thank all of you for A, being here, B, I'm sure there's a lot of questions or ideas or suggestions that I'm hopeful we can answer, and I'd love to give Mr. Craig Robbins kind of the floor just to kind of say a few words, if that's okay. Thanks.
It's hard to follow that act, David. It's really nice to be back doing something public in Miami Beach. As most of you know, I started my career here in the South Beach with Saul. He actually started about a year before I did, renovating residential buildings in the Art Deco district. And what I learned from working in Miami Beach and being part of this community is that a lot of times there's a tension between developers and the residents. And that doesn't necessarily need to be the case, because there is a formula for enlightened progress and enlightened growth. And what I experienced at the beginning of my career was this perceived tension between the preservation movement and development. And it was a big mistake that people made. The conventional wisdom at the time was that you should tear down all these historical buildings and build, the kind of towers that you see everywhere. And a group of us joined the preservationists, which is a normal advocate of historic preservation, the Development Corporation, which is not necessarily a normal advocate of preservation, but also the developers. And we all teamed up and we fought for the kind of legislation that would protect those historical buildings and to figure out how to adaptively reuse them. And by doing that, we did something that no one ever really thought was possible. We kind of participated in a movement that reinvented Miami Beach first, but Miami as a creative city of the future. And I learned so much from that. In the 30 years that I've been working as a real estate developer, I have never done a project without unanimous support from all the community associations. It's very important to me what you all think and what the neighbors think. And while I'm sure I'll never do anything where 100% every single person will be behind me, at least the leadership and the votes of the people that really matter, the residents of the communities, believe in what we're doing. I would not be part of this process if I didn't really think it was important for Miami Beach and for all of us. Today I have some assets in Miami Beach, my home is here, but mainly I'm a resident. And one of the things that I think we need to do is come up with intelligent, enlightened ways to have progress on the new issues that we confront. The original proposals for the convention center, the ones that didn't go forward, I thought they were good, but I also found them problematic. They were larger, taller, there was a lot more construction that was going to be involved and a lot more sort of traffic generating kind of uses. And this, I feel, is a really brilliant way to come up with it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be speaking about myself in that way. I think it's in the right scale, and it's something that the convention center really needs. At the moment, the city's disadvantaged because there are certain higher quality conventions that opt not to come here because there isn't an on-site facility. And part of the reason is if you're coming and you're going to work on a convention, you don't want to have to drive from all over the city, going back and forth every day. It's really convenient for a certain component of the people that are going to be there to just be able to walk back and forth. And so what happens is we end up with less qualitative events here, and we also are actually creating a situation where the people that are coming here, at least some of them, don't have that benefit. So I think all in all, we've built a magnificent convention center. It's about to be finished. I think most of you know I'm a big participant because Art Basel is our partner at Design Miami, and we do a really wonderful event there every year. I'm very much excited to have the new facility. And I really think that this hotel is important. I look forward to getting back up there and dialoguing with you and hearing about any concerns you may have and sincerely wanting to address them. So thank you for bringing me back to the beach.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Now we'll hear briefly from Rolando, who is from the Bureau. And they're really the ones that have the responsibility to book the convention center. And so Rolando will tell us what he feels this means for your ability to book the facility.
And I think briefly was the operative word, because we want to hear from you. And yes, I'm with the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. I've been there for 20 plus years. We're the ones that the city hires to bring the right types of conventions, the right types of global events like Art Basel and Design Miami. And I know the title of today's chat was, do we need or do we want a headquarter hotel? I think the question is really, do we want the right convention business? So take a step back, because if we as a community, and you're the residents, want the right type of convention business, then we need the right hotel. And we strongly feel that this is the right team for the right hotel. But let me go a little bit back to that point of the convention business. Craig spoke about it somewhat, but let me go a little bit deeper, because currently, and for many, many years now, the mix of conventions at the Miami Beach Convention Center versus what we're going to call local shows that are great, that you and I perhaps have enjoyed over the years, whether it's remodeling shows or jewelry shows or even auto shows. Those are great, and those are great local satisfiers, and we've all grown up attending. That has historically been the majority of the use of the convention center. The types of conventions that we want to bring in have had some limited success are those conventions that bring in the doctors, the lawyers, the financial folks. In fact, 2 weeks ago, and many of you weren't even probably aware that it was here, we had the American Health and Information Management Association, AHIMA. Those are about 4,000 delegates in the medical and tech space. And that's the type of convention that we want more of. It's very, very difficult, if not almost impossible, to bring those types of conventions without a headquarter hotel. And later on I can go into more detail exactly why. Well, let me explain more. That's all that's prompted me. So they demand, when meeting planners, and believe, we deal with meeting planners every day. That's what we get paid for. And we go to Chicago, to New York. We go to global communities and say, hey, bring your meeting, your convention. Again, the right type of convention to Miami. What do you need? First of all, they choose the destination, and we are all blessed to have Miami Beach. I mean, that goes a long way. But it doesn't seal the deal. Think about it. You're a meeting planner. You're a party planner. You're bringing a lot of people together. So you want to make sure the destination's the right place, and you want to make sure where you're going to host the party, in this case the convention center, is the right facility. And thankfully, through the wisdom of the city and a lot of folks invested in that project, we now have what I think does justice to the destination of Miami Beach. We have now a world-class convention center, almost finished, that is part of a world-class community like Miami Beach. So check on the destination, check on the convention center. A close third, if not second sometimes, is tell me about your hotel room block. And it sounds so mundane, but meeting planners are practical people. Our target convention is about 4,000 folks. Okay, 4,000. You want to minimize the footprint of that group. You definitely want to have a connected and/or contiguous headquarter hotel. And in this case, 80% of that hotel will be reserved for us to book those conventions. So, okay, 80% of 800, that's 640. Which also speaks to the point of how other hotels will benefit. This hotel, there will be, by us bringing more of the right types of conventions, that means that more of the right types of conventioneers will not only be staying in that hotel, visiting Lincoln Road, visiting the Convention Center District, visiting Ocean Drive, but they will also be occupying the hotels that are immediately surrounding that Convention Center District, thereby compressing business to other parts of our community. So it has an exponential impact. And I can't emphasize enough the right types of conventions, because the other key element, and it's not just having the right hotel, is having the right booking policy. So the city has also changed the booking policy and what is going to be given priority at that new convention center. And it's conventions that bring in out-of-town conventioneers. Local events will be the least priority type of business. But to make sure we get those top priority, what we're calling P1s, we need his headquarter hotel. And I'm sure a lot of you have gone to conventions around the country, if not around the world. And we are the only major destination in the United States that does not have a headquarter hotel. And I encourage you to please do your research and a couple of Google strokes, and you can confirm that. And the other thing that David spoke of, which is so, so critically important, there doesn't exist a convention center headquarter hotel in the country, probably the world, that has not received government subsidy. That is not the case here, folks. It's 100% at risk. You saw the numbers. And in essence, you're taking a 2-acre parking lot that is generating approximately $100,000 in parking revenue per year. And that will now start generating, I think, at a minimum, $2 million or so a year, if not.
It's $2 million in lease
In year
revenue,
five.
and
then real estate tax is another 3.5, and it's over $10 million.
So I mean, and that revenue will help the city address some of its necessary issues. I'm not here to speak specifically to the financial model, to the benefits. I'm here to tell you, and as a resource to you, to tell you how critically important this is. You know, I have a list in my office. I think it's about 15 conventions that we have not been able to bring specifically because of the Headquarter Hotel. They tell us, guys, we love Miami Beach. We were there once, but we can't go back. You don't have that Headquarter Hotel. Because it's not that we don't have it, it's because everyone else does. So as great as we are, and as wonderful as our product is, we are no longer competitive when it comes to bringing the right types of conventions. We will have some success, and AHIMA is an example of that. We booked AHIMA 3 years ago, by the way. And that's typically, at a minimum, how long it takes to book this business. So we're very, very excited the possibility that is, when this referendum hopefully happens in November 6th, I think there's about a 2.5 year build out. The timing is perfect. Because on November 7th, we, on behalf of the city, and frankly on behalf of the residents, will be getting on the phone, calling all those conventions and say, hey guys, remember that you couldn't come because we don't have a Headquarter Hotel? Well, we have one ready for you. And the timing is perfect. And I can't emphasize the dramatic difference of what the right convention will do. The right convention, folks, will fly into our airport. They will get shuttled to the Headquarter Hotel or the immediately surrounding hotels. They will not bring their cars, they'll bring their wallets, they'll walk primarily to Lincoln Road, Ocean Drive. They're going to spend each one spends $1,100 in our community when they come on a convention. And that trickles to everyone. So, again, there's great events that have been happening at the convention center. Some of them have already relocated to other parts of our community. That home design remodeling show is at a facility in Wynwood, Mana, that you may have heard of. I saw it there, it works. The locals, it's great, they love it. It's the right fit for that show. And that's what's happening as we speak, and that's what we want. We want the convention center to be available to us to book these priority 1 conventions. And these aren't big conventions, folks. This is quality, not quantity. So I'll make myself available for other questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rolando. One comment I want to make, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. I was served on the Blue Ribbon panel to try and figure this out. And one of the things that we were interested in was to know what the opinion was of the Miami Beach hotel community about having a larger convention center hotel. We thought maybe they wouldn't be so receptive to the idea, maybe they would think it was bad for their business. And so we asked them to come and talk to us, and I went out and spoke to a bunch of hotel owners. The interesting thing is that when the convention center was closed and under construction for the last 2 years, the local hotels suffered horribly. And they very quickly understood that the convention center and the business that it generates puts a lot of people, asses in beds, that support their business. And I don't think there were any hoteliers that came in to say, you know what, we think this is going to be competition for us that's not good. On the contrary, they were all of the opinion that if the convention center thrives, it's going to be good for all of the hotels in Miami Beach. As Rolando explained, if their target convention is 2,000 to 4,000 people who are not using their cars and are not local but are staying in hotels, all of those people can stay at the convention center hotel. I mean, the 80% room block is going to be 640 rooms. That's going to leave 1,500 to 3,000 people who are going to be staying in the other hotels. So the hoteliers like it. Now that probably, has a little bit of a traffic impact because not everybody's going to be at the convention center hotel. And that's why I'm encouraged when I see David saying how they're trying to integrate all the different transportation modalities, including bicycles, which I love and which are becoming more popular, to get people into the convention center. So with that said, there's a microphone. You know what, I'll pass it around. It may be easier. We have one up there still that's working?
If
starts crapping out, we'll come back. Okay, questions? Anybody have a question? Okay.
I also like that you're incorporating the multimodal concepts. Can you just, especially pedestrian, this is a very walkable area and that needs to be promoted even more. And you did mention that in your presentation. I'm speaking to you directly because you showed so many beautiful slides. Can you mention the pedestrian connection to the Convention Center Hotel and Lincoln Road? I think you mentioned that, but
Sure.
you know, that's a busy street there. So what is the specifics on creating more pedestrian-oriented space
Sure.
from one to the other?
Sure, so two things. Obviously, from a pedestrian standpoint, a hotel connected to the convention center, there is that sky bridge that we connected on the second floor right to the convention center. Then on the ground floor connecting to the convention center, there's an additional, basically traffic calming walk that we're connecting that's basically gonna, right now we have a street light. We have basically the street light at Convention Center Drive and we have the street light at Washington. In between that, we're gonna be creating a new connection that basically goes to New World Symphony and that area. And that will basically add, let's say, one more connection to Lincoln Road. On top of that, one of the things we did with the design was getting people not only from the hotel but from the convention center to Lincoln Road. We wanted to create the eyebrow so that we had a weatherproofing condition so people could actually walk and can actually have a place not only to walk but also walk without rain. And we're studying certain improvements. All of you know Lincoln Road has James it's field operations, a landscape architect's doing a series of improvements to Lincoln Road that I know we're all excited about and kind of that's ongoing now. And so our goal is also to work with them and how they can create some ribs through Lincoln Road and trying to promote that connectivity, because right now the connectivity is not so promoted. It's somewhat, in a way back of house. We have the New World Symphony Garage, we have the 17th Street Garage, that Paseo, and let's say trying to design it from a lighting standpoint, wider sidewalks, and kind of something interesting and cool with Lincoln Road is something that we're also going to be studying. But again, answering your question, we're adding one more walk from the north side of 17th Street to the south side, in between Washington Avenue and Convention Center Drive.
Okay.
It won't be elevated though.
No, it will not be elevated. That's
All right,
correct.
next question.
Yeah, could you say how many parking spaces there will be, and how do you determine how many are needed?
So two things. We have a firm called Newton Parking Advisors. They do parking feasibility studies for lenders, institutional investors, and also planning studies. So we engage them. And then we also had the city code, which part of the convention center. One of the big things, just so we're all clear, is this proposal is, for instance, 100,000 square feet less than the prior proposal that was going on in 2015. And on top of, we have 320 parking spaces. So basically, the Newton consulting was around in the high 200s, and the city parking requirement was around 0.4. You hear a lot of stories and throughout different communities that we're in about the parking, whether parking is needed or not. And one of the great things I think about this development is, and based off the findings of the Blue Ribbon panel, is that the 7th Street Garage, there's going to be less pressure on removing that, even though some in the community may or may not want it, but there's going to be less pressure in eliminating that parking facility, because we were able to fit within the 2 acres not touch the Fillmore and not touch a 17th Street, and we were still able to deliver the 800 rooms that basically have, that is the minimum amount of rooms in order for meeting planners to classify us as a headquarter hotel for their rankings on destinations. So we're going to have 320 spaces. We comply to the city code, and we also hired Newton Parking Advisors to do our parking feasibility study.
Okay, anybody have a question?
from New York City, and I've lived here for about 10 years, and I came into this meeting tonight thinking, even before I came in tonight, thinking that I'd like it to remain a small town. But after hearing your presentation and speaking to Michael Grieco, I'm more apt to vote for the hotel. That's kind of a comment. But what I was thinking was, if all these, high-quality conventioneers are roaming around and walking around and enjoying South Beach, I was thinking, and tell me if this might be a possibility, with them going over and walking on Washington Avenue and Ocean Drive, do you think it might improve what's going on there with all the criminal activity that's happening now? I would think so.
Living in the city of Miami Beach and going to a lot of the restaurants and partaking in a lot of the food and beverage experiences, and I think maybe this question's a better answered by Craig, but I've spoken to a lot of the small business community as well as a lot of the retail stores, and they realize how important this convention center is to the small businesses of Miami Beach. And I think you're right. I think the economic output, one thing is financial, which is kind of the revenues that the city's getting in taxes, resort taxes, and lease revenues. But the other one is kind of that indirect economic benefit to the local businesses that I think is necessary in order to, I think, really preserve the Miami Beach's identity as the #1 kind of traveling destination in the country, and to achieve kind of a lot of the goals and objectives we have. So I definitely think so, but let me have Craig just share his thoughts.
You were so eloquent, I don't know. I can add anything. I think it's really a good question, and it's something that I focus on a lot, because really the emphasis of our business is in neighborhood building. We don't ever think of working in an area and just doing the building and getting the most out of it, but we think about how that building may elevate the whole area around it. And a lot of times what happens is that communities can sink to a lower common denominator. And when that happens, it's very hard to elevate them. And I think that because of the strategic role that this asset can have in the general area of Miami Beach, that it actually can be a catalyst to elevating other things. And that's because what's going to happen is the businesses that will then establish around it can target for a sort of more elevated type of clientele and also a use. So I am hopeful that this project can have a larger impact than just the immediate, and I think it's the right kind of use for the area.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on that, Rolando, maybe you know better, what would you say is the average amount of money spent by a visitor going to the car show or the antique show compared to a conventioneer who might be coming to stay in the convention center hotel?
So while I don't have the specific number of a car show goer, let's call him that, a local. I mean, he's a visitor to Miami Beach, he or she, but just do the rough math. They are not spending the money in the hotel, which the average daily rate might be $250. So you're probably talking the difference between someone spending $1,100 and perhaps spending $100. I mean, it's a dramatic difference. And again, they are both worthwhile experiences. I did want to say something on this, and I think Craig probably said it most eloquently. You noticed the small space that would be potentially a welcome center at the base of the hotel. And I know there's a couple of welcome centers. And when I mentioned, of course, Lincoln Road, Ocean Drive a little bit further away, we already saw that impact when HEMA was in town 2 weeks ago. We formed a partnership with the Lincoln Road Business Improvement District. The gentleman from Quality Meats a few blocks away had their busiest Sunday that they had literally before the convention center closed. It's not a coincidence in terms of the economic impact and the dispersal of dollars. The other commitment that has been discussed at other public meetings is this should be a project that not only benefits the small businesses in the immediate vicinity, but also to use whether it's that visitor center and the visitor centers that we support to get them to visit not only Ocean Drive, all of Washington Avenue, businesses south of 5th. So Alton Road, Sunrise Harbor. This will have an exponential impact because the convention goers want to explore the destination. So I think there will be positive intended and unintended consequences. I truly believe that.
Okay, next question.
This question actually is for Craig, and it doesn't really have to do with the convention center, but more with Design Miami. Once they turn the parking lot across the street from the convention center into the park, where do you go?
So I think they came up with a really good solution, which is there's going to be a section of the park where we can actually continue to build the Design Miami tent. And so fortunately for us, and I think for the community, it's going to get to stay on the beach, and it'll get integrated into the park once a year.
Is there any chance we can make it a permanent situation? We're starving for galleries here in Miami Beach and being able to see art year-round, or at least 4 times a year. Bring in, art fairs or something. Is there a way of making it kind of a semi-permanent?
So I share your goal. And what I've seen happen in Miami so far is that we've definitely emerged as a more important city for galleries, but it hasn't been our strength. Really, with art, we've got the #1 cultural event in the United States each year now, Art Basel, Design Miami, and the other fairs that come around.
Enough. It's way too short. They
No,
should make it 2
I
weeks.
know. I agree with you. But that's quite a feat for our city. And we do have incredible emerging museums. So on a museum level, I think we're growing really well. Obviously, there's extraordinary collections. We're one of the foremost places where there's public access to a lot of these private collections. And there is a building gallery scene, but it's tougher. And at the moment, they seem not to be gravitating towards Miami Beach or even towards a neighborhood as much like the Design District or Wynwood. They're going north to the Little Haiti area generally, and that's price driven because they need large spaces and they can't afford the kind of rents that the other neighborhoods. We subsidize a lot of these cultural spaces and galleries. I know that was a long answer to your question, but I think that we will continue to emerge and build ourselves as a cultural community, hitting the different facets of collections, public institutions, events, and hopefully galleries.
If I may add to this, because you asked specifically about galleries, but I think it was also about more shows like Art Basel, more shows like Design
I
Miami.
think we need to have a tent that stays there so that we can have stuff.
But the good news is that we have a permanent tent, and that's the convention center. And I say that because part of our goal is to bring more global quality events like Art Basel now. And Craig obviously has a close partnership with Messerschmitt, which is the ownership group of Art Basel and other events. And Craig, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there are other events that we are actively pursuing. And there's already one event that's coming up early next year, which is Grand Basel, which is the same organization. They're bringing, it's a different type of an experience, and that'll be next. So there are other shows out there. And when we're traveling the world on behalf of the city, yes, we're looking at the doctors and the lawyers, but we're also looking for the select events using the model of Art Basel and Design Miami to bring more of those. So whether they're in the tent or in the building, that's a top priority for us as well.
All right, let's get to the next question.
Hi. My main concern is continuing to be traffic, and I know that nobody asked any question about traffic. I live 2 blocks away from the convention center, and since the hotel construction started, our streets have been flooded with traffic, early mornings and late afternoon. So we residents, we have to plan when to go to the market, when to pick up our cleaners, and doing all those things. On top of the hotel and the convention center, they are building around the convention center a huge amount of new construction, which is a new Trader Joe, Michael's, I think it's also Whole Foods is moving also to the neighborhood, and on and on and on. If you add all that, it will double the amount of traffic, plus the hotel, plus the convention center, and plus everything else that is going on with all the constructions. They are scheduled also on Alton Road, on Washington. I personally don't, I'm trying to figure out what is the benefit that this brings to the residents. Well, I'm not done. Secondly, what is it to us?
Let me answer the first question.
Oh, okay. I have a second.
Okay, David, you want to
Sure.
get to it? Because I want to get a few other people, and then I'll come back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, Craig, you could answer now.
So I think it's a very fair question.
Craig, not to cut you off, but the survey that the city did in response to people's attitudes about the hotel indicated that traffic was the biggest issue that the residents of Miami Beach were concerned about as far as the hotel goes. So, and there's a lot of people in this gentleman's camp who feel the same way.
Well, as a resident of Miami Beach, it's my biggest concern also. I share it with you. And I think there isn't a perfect answer to it. But first of all, if we gravitate towards the kind of conventions that are not just local traffic drivers, then that will actually reduce traffic. There's certain kind of events that will have less traffic than something that is bringing a lot of people in cars locally to the convention center. Secondly, clearly, if a lot of the people that need to go back and forth aren't in hotels where they need to get in cars to get back and forth to the convention center, that'll actually have an impact of reducing traffic. And then I think as the convention center becomes more successful, that would have some impact on increasing traffic. But I actually think if you study it and you look at the impact of this, because you won't have to go from the Doral or a lot of these hotels and drive to the convention center, and because it will create the kind of events that are where people are coming from out of town and attending them, than the local events that are bringing a lot, and at the same time not dramatically increasing the traffic.
Just to follow up on that, David, I don't know how familiar you are with the two projects that the City Transportation Department has on the drawing boards for Alton Road South, left turn 2 lane at Michigan, and Alton Road North, 2 lanes right onto Dade Boulevard. So are you working with them to prod them to make those happen? Because they've been talking about those for years, and I don't know if they don't have the money, don't have the initiative, or what the stumbling block is there. But I think those are 2 important projects that residents would like to see the city's actually making investments in making the traffic flow more smoothly to get to and from the convention center, so you don't see that kind of gridlock.
Yep. So I think it's a perfect point. One of the things that I've done, and I'm sure Craig has done as well, is always about neighborhood building. And so, November 7th, this responsibility really we hold on our shoulders, and as a catalyst to the city and to achieve new revenue sources for the city to start implementing that things. Because a lot of times what we see cities have is they have a resource allocation dilemma. They have an annual budget over $600 million, of which approximately $200 million is coming from resort taxes. That shows how important tourism is to the city's annual budget for quality of life and services. And they're starting to decide, well, where are we going to spend money? And so for us, and in our view, the traffic flow is a paramount to the success of the convention center, to the success of having a vibrant and secure residential community. So 2 things. One, on that traffic project, we would act as a role as a catalyst to try to work with the city, just like we did when we donated around $10.5 million to the North Shore Open Space Park, and we met with the city and John Rebar, the parks director, et cetera, and we're really pushing, and hopefully we're starting construction on that in February or March. I think one of the roles as a developer or business owner here, and responsibilities for that matter, is as we embark on our projects, what are the needs of the community and how do we help them to have as much positive energy? Going back to two of the points that Craig made as it relates to traffic, and it's pretty obvious because I felt it during the auto show. I live in Venetian Causeway in San Marino Island. When that AHIMA was there, I didn't even feel it. I didn't even know it was even there. They told me, they mentioned it, I had no clue. When the auto show came, I really had a clue. And so what I've learned through this process is there's these P1, P2, P3 events. And what the convention center historically has served is that P3 function, and what we want is the P1 function. And the P1 is highest economic output, impact to a community with the lowest amount of traffic. And then P3 obviously is a low economic impact and high traffic. And so our goal is, and I think, that I think is a crystallized answer as it relates to the Whole Foods development and the Trader Joe's and the Michael's. I do think that there is some sort of urban development that's going on right now that during construction I think is a little more impactful, but I think after the construction it's going to be, I think, urban development and proper planning. In my view, workforce housing is something we need to be focused on and working on more aggressively in the city of Miami Beach. But having these amenities closer to residential, I think is has a hope to reduce traffic. I think we need to solve the workforce housing a problem that I think we have, because that'll help and really create more of a walkable, bikeable city from a daily life standpoint. So our goal is that I think we have some long-term visions for our city that I hope we share as reducing traffic and also making it more walkable and more connected. But I definitely think convention centers, this convention center hotel will reduce traffic with the quality of the conventions that we're going to be bringing in.
Okay, next question. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. David, it sounds absolutely beautiful. And thank you for the money for the open space park, which is now the North Beach, Oceanside, whatever it is, park. I think I'm the only one from up north that's here tonight. And I'm also from New York. And my very first job as a kid was signing in delegates for the New York City Convention Bureau. I used to do that when I was young. So here's the thing. Will you use, I think the shuttle is the way to go, okay? It is not, you do not want your guests riding the trolleys at night, please believe me, or talk to me privately, okay? Until the culture of them changes or the routes can be adjusted or something. Because you do not want to have people coming back traumatized. I'm sorry guys, but I speak to them all the time in transportation, and I'm on them and I report back stuff. There's a period of adjustment, let's just leave it at that. It's a beautiful thing, the trolleys are great, okay? So here's my question. Can you and will you use your shuttle also to tie in and network, let's say if there's an event at the band shell, to take your people that are young, that can, ride it at both ends of the clock and have money, the ones that come, that don't go to sleep at 8 o'clock like the doctors might. Will you take them to other parts of town besides just Lincoln Road, which is probably not where they're going to want to go at night?
So you're absolutely right. Leading planners, including AHIMA, they actually pay for a shuttle system. And that's a significant investment, but they do that because they want to know that their delegates are going to get up from their hotels, and they're going to show up at the convention center for all those educational sessions or for their trade show booth. What also so that typically happens during the day. So during AHIMA, you probably saw a bunch of motor coach buses, privately operated, all labeled accordingly to what hotels they were going to. If you have a headquarter hotel, you're going to need less buses, by the way, and that's the other net benefit. So you go down from 20 hotels to 10 hotels on average. After hours, and young or old, most convention planners will in fact have multiple after-hours events, and they go out of their way, and that's a role that we play through our department. We encourage them to get them out of their hotels and to do their after-hours events, and then whether it's in North Beach, at the band shell, we do a lot of events down in south of 5th, at the Penrod facility. We've done open dining experiences along Lincoln Road. That's where we use that as an opportunity because they're here for business. They're stuck in a convention center, a beautiful one albeit. They're in the hotel, but we want to make sure that they get out and about and not only get to know the destination, but to disperse their dollars, quite frankly. So that's at the top of our list.
All right, thank you.
I'm just saying, keep them together in a safe environment, please.
Okay, next
All things-
question.
And to add to that, the article in the Miami Herald yesterday basically said people are sleeping here, but they're going to Design District in Wynwood to eat. So address that.
Don't blame me.
So,
We will have 2 signature restaurants as well as an all-day casual restaurant at the facility. But again, we're hopeful that the east side of Lincoln Road, which has so much potential, can really realize its tenancy and really reposition itself to really have the best possible retailing and shopping and food and beverage experiences. I'm a big believer in Miami Beach, and long term, I think a lot of emerging areas like Wynwood and Design District are great and interesting. But I think Miami Beach has some roots and some history and some very strong cultural aspects that those communities don't. I just think we not lost our. I think we need to further and enhance our identity as the world has evolved and changed with it.
Okay, if I may, I know there was a lot of buzz about that article, and one can debate the numbers back and forth, but I think Craig said it best when we're going to be bringing a higher quality customer, and the businesses, which includes the restaurants and the retail, will elevate their offerings to accommodate those higher value customers. So again, maybe not by design directly, but indirectly, that there will be more dollars into the community, and I think there's going to be a lot of businesses that will open up to graciously accept their business and offer the right experience.
From your lips.
Yeah.
You heard it here for a second.
Okay, let me ask a question to you, and I'm sure many in the room have had the same experience. I, as a homeowner, have received several pro-convention center hotel mailers, and I've received several anti-convention center hotel mailers. Can you talk a little bit, you've talked about why you think it's a great project. Talk about what these anti-mailers are about, and what your opinion is as to their accuracy.
I think a few things. Specifically, one of the things we did early on was try to understand the people that were against it in 2015. So we met with a lot of specific, there's actually one commissioner that voted in favor this time, and that's Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez, that was really campaigned against it in 2015. So we really turned her into a believer, and I thought that was good. And I think a lot of it had to do with the traffic plan at the property and queuing, and also the height. We also have identified a lot of former commissioners, former mayors, all that are now supporting this. So it's a mystery to us who these specific groups and political committees that try to manipulate our city and our citizens and try to mislead them into a lot of using a lot of good strategies, and for us, we try to stay positive and stay focused on the qualities of this, and try to really are numb to some of this misleading stuff. But
I do think you need to address it head on. I mean, basically, the gambling industry,
yes,
for whatever reason, has identified this hotel as something that they think is a bad thing because there's a provision in the lease that says there won't be any gambling in this property. That was something that the commission felt strongly about, and the Blue Ribbon panel had recommended it as well, because we didn't want people to think that this facility was being built ultimately to be used for gambling. So why are the gambling people shooting at this?
So I think there's two things, and I could get into a deep dive on it, but
I think because people are
there's two things. One kind of obvious thing is there's a Florida constitutional amendment on the ballot. That's Amendment 3. And if you vote yes for Amendment 3, you are anti-gaming. And if you vote yes on Miami Beach Referendum 3, you're also in essence symbolizing you're anti-gaming as well, because you don't want gaming at the Convention Center hotel and property. So I think that's kind of more superficial thing. The non-superficial thing, a lot of the traditionally gaming interests have wanted cities to be downtrodden with economic development, having budget issues, having issues with their economy, and so that they can come in and save the day. And so that's a much more deeper kind of conversation as it relates to the financial stability of a city. And when gambling interests want to bring gaming to a particular city, they don't want it to be very strong and in solid footing, because then the residents of the community, can stand up and say no to, kind of given the impact it has on the DNA or culture of that city. So I think that's kind of the two, yeah.
I mean, what I've seen is they've been arguing that it's a bad thing to prohibit gambling because we're going to lose out on a lot of jobs that gambling would bring. I mean, if we have a choice between bringing gambling jobs or bringing convention center hotel jobs, I think that's a pretty easy choice to make.
So, and if I may, I know there was a conversation about, would this new hotel create undue competition, and thereby hotels would be against it. And I will tell you that the Greater Miami Beaches Hotel Association has formally supported this. So, in terms of where the backstories may be, it is not from hotels. And they realize that this will bring more of the right customers to this community that will benefit them all.
You guys are working so hard and putting so much money into this thing. And I agree, I think it's great. But what happens when the conventioneers walk down to Ocean Drive, as it is today, or Washington Avenue, and they want to go to the beach, and they come back to their blanket, and their wallet is gone, their iPhone is gone, which is what's happening today. And I mean, there's police chases going down Washington Avenue. If you guys don't get behind trying to straighten out what's going on down here, you're going to have a lot of problems. This place is like out of hand. It's like Dodge. Are you aware of that?
Yeah. I mean, these are not the politicians that are going to necessarily be correcting every one of those problems.
Well,
I do think the underlying theme that they're trying to drive home and that I take away from it is that when you change the kind of people that are coming to the convention center, from day trippers to people who are going to stay for a longer period of time that have more money, it's not going to make a change overnight, but gradually there will be different kinds of businesses that will start up that will cater to the conventioneers. And as the convention center and the hotel start to thrive, those businesses will do well and they'll replace other businesses. It's not going to be an overnight thing. And you're right, the beach has problems that the politicians are trying to deal with. But I think always the best remedy for an area that's experiencing some crime is to try and upscale the business activity that's going on and hope that the success of the businesses will take care of that. I'm sorry.
That sounds like osmosis, so. If there's no planning to try to work on what's going on down there, this convention center is not going to be so great.
There's a lot of things that the city's doing that, and I know Saul Gross is part of 41st Street, and there's a committee that Washington and there's also one on 41st Street as well. So I do see a lot of kind of they call them these blue ribbon task forces, or these task forces that are looking at Ocean Drive, looking at Washington Avenue, and looking at 41st Street. 41st Street just hired Jan Gell, which is one of the most preeminent social scientists in the world, and really worked on New York and kind of Times Square and kind of really converted it into a pedestrian kind of node, and there was a lot of resistance to it. So I do see the city hiring a lot of great experts to plan and work on these solutions. But like Saul says, it's going to take time, but it's also going to take resources. And I think an asset like this that's currently not generating much for the city and creating new revenues, I think is going to help provide the financial resources in order to plan, engineer, and then improve some of these areas and enforcement and policing and those types of things.
Just to follow up on what David said, then we're going to take the last question from Jeff. 1 second. Just so you know, the GEO bond, one of the 3 questions in terms of planning includes $20 million of a capital infusion to Ocean Drive, and $15 million on 41st Street, and $10 million on Washington Avenue. So $45 million of planning dollars and money and ideas are going to be invested in 3 of the areas that you were specifically talking about. So I don't think the city's ignoring that, and I hope you'll support that GEO-bond question and ballot question to get it passed so that the city can make those investments. Okay, Jeff.
Sorry, I'm going to have to excuse
This is the
myself.
last question.
Okay.
Actually, it's just a brief statement, so we'll end on a positive note, just to further what Saul just said about Ocean Drive and the investments. We're actually in the middle of formation of what's called the South Beach Business Improvement District, which is from Ocean Drive from 5th to 15th and Collins from 5th to 15th as well. We have business improvement districts on Lincoln Road, a business improvement district on Washington was just approved, and our South Beach Business Improvement District is going to be spending money on public safety, what we call crime and grind, keeping it safe and keeping it clean, marketing and advertising. We hired Jerome Barth, who was one of the designers of the High Line in New York, as well as the Bryant Park in New York as well. So we're going to be activating Loomis Park and really, really, really transforming the area. So I just wanted to make that quick note so that everybody here hears that. And thank you all very much. I think you guys have done a great job.
All right, any other questions will be privately after the meeting. Thank you, everybody.